Do you want to save money at the grocery store, eat more organic, whole foods, cultivate food security, and feel more connected to the earth? If so, then growing your own food is a no-brainer. You wouldn't believe how many people come to me claiming that they can't grow their own food. They think they don't have enough space, that they're too busy, or that they simply don't have what it takes. Perhaps you've fallen for one of these gardening myths. If you think you can't grow food, or if you think the only food that you have access to is what you buy in the grocery store, I have a life-changing webinar that you need to see. It's free and will help you unearth your inner gardener. I've helped thousands of people just like you learn to grow their own food, and I'm speaking from my own experience when I say that with the right knowledge in place, there is no such thing as a black thumb. With this webinar, you can begin making your garden dreams come true and start growing delicious, nutritious food for your family. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or go to iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own food. Remember, that's GARDEN to 44222 or iwanttogarden.com.
You're listening to the Urban Farm Podcast, your partner in the Grow Your Own Food revolution. Whether you've just been introduced to urban farming or you're a lifelong advocate, we're sure you'll leave feeling more informed, equipped, and empowered to dig deeper into the soil of your local food economy. With you every step of the way, here's your host, Greg Peterson.
Today on the Urban Farm Podcast, we have Danielle and Jordan of Grow Your Own Freedom to talk about their experiences with backyard urban gardening and creating their sustainable business. Danielle and Jordan started Grow Your Own Freedom, a sustainable living business that provides raised bed garden services and promotes the use of natural and organic herbal body products. Their goal is to help people grow what they can, know what they buy, go back to the basics, and discover nature's goodness. They use their small piece of land and home as a place to experiment and apply the techniques that interest them and help simplify their lives. Their goal is to take what they learn and pass it on to others in their local community and beyond. Welcome to the show today, Danielle and Jordan.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share about the path that you took to get where you're at now?
Sure. I'd love to get started with that. So Jordan and I basically got started in an apartment. So we were definitely looking at some really small space. And I had always grown up around gardens. My parents had always been gardeners. And even when I was in college and beyond, I used to grow, something. Mm-hmm. So one day I came home and we had started dating maybe 6 months before. And I came home with 2 containers and some pepper plants and some tomato plants and some herbs. And he looked at me and he was like, "What are you doing? Why are you growing food in the backyard? We live in a little apartment." Uh-huh. I said, "Well, I've always done that. My parents have always done that." And I think that with that little push, and I didn't even know it, he kind of took over. And that season, he I say season in quotes, we had 2 container gardens.
Nice.
He took over and started, taking care of the tomato plants and taking care of stuff. And from there, every year just got a little bit more. And, where we're at right now is we bought a house and we are on a 1/4 acre, and that includes the house. So when we say 1/4 acre, we actually mean the house is included on that. We started out with 2 raised beds here, and then that moved to a couple more and some blueberry bushes and every piece of grass we're trying to kind of slowly get rid of, which our dog is not thrilled with, but she has learned how to weave through the garden beds.
Nice.
So we have about, how many, Jordan? 16 garden beds?
Oh, wow.
About that.
We have 16 garden beds, and he's slowly putting in a mini fruit orchard. We just built a a hoop house in the backyard. So slowly we are turning in our backyard into kind of, we like to say, like an educational space for people to see what's possible in our yard.
Yeah.
But before we got into like that really, 16 garden beds, when we were in the planning stages of our backyard, we had a strip of land behind our alleyway, like right by our alleyway, and we decided to put a community garden in there. I don't really know whose idea it was, but we just said, okay, there's space there and it's outside of our fence. And from that was where we planted vegetables for the neighbors, and we had no idea that was going to be something that took off. And what ended up happening is that we met more neighbors than we ever had in the 2 years that we had lived there.
Isn't that cool?
It was amazing. And from that, coupled with, we also were involved with taking some permaculture courses. With that experience of creating that community garden and meeting neighbors and learning about permaculture, we said, you know what, we want to start a business where we pass that on to other people. So that's kind of how we started our business, and we've been running our business for about 2 years, where we help people grow food in their backyard. That's one component, is growing food in our backyard, or in their backyard. Excuse me.
Jordan, you want to add to that?
Sure, yeah. I'll just kind of fill in a little bit of the details at the start. As Danielle said, she had always kind of grown up with a garden. I'd never had a garden. We never grew. We didn't grow anything. So that was totally foreign to me, and really happy, as I look back on it now, that she kind of pushed us in that direction. And I didn't know what I was missing. I mean, like, being able to walk outside and pick a fresh tomato or fresh greens, there's nothing better than that, really.
Yeah, no kidding.
And as she was saying, like, kind of just the progression, obviously there was a lot that happened from a couple containers to 16 garden beds now, but I think it was just, always kind of striving to do a little bit more, learning from mistakes, and coming across some good resources along the way. I think one of the first books that I really looked at in gardening was The Square Foot Garden.
Oh yeah,
by,
excellent book.
Yeah, and that was just a lot of good information, a lot of good resources, a lot of good ideas. Yeah, that was kind of the framework for building our first couple raised beds, and just had a great experience with that. And each year added a little bit more, and now we're kind of at the point where need to refine a little bit the things that we do grow, because with 16 garden beds that can end up being quite a lot to handle. So we're kind of just playing around with what works the best, and the foods that we really eat and the foods that we like to share as well.
Right. So I was going to ask you, what do you do with all that food?
Well, we have been able to preserve some, definitely the tomatoes and the peppers. We were actually, this past fall, we canned some hot pepper sauce and also some sliced, like, pickled peppers. Canned some tomato sauce, froze some tomato sauce, dehydrated tomatoes.
Aren't dehydrated tomatoes great?
They're so good.
Oh my gosh, we made a couple of gallons of them last year when it was all said and done, which was a lot of tomatoes. What do you do with them?
I like to kind of rehydrate them and heat them and serve them over pasta. Even with pesto, even with a basil pesto, put some tomatoes on top. It's very good, very good.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we give stuff to our neighbors and give stuff to our family and friends, so it's good.
Perfect. So Danielle, you mentioned the P word, permaculture. So did you do a permaculture design course? And tell me about it.
Okay, so our permaculture design course, I really think, opened up our eyes to what was possible in our backyard, because that was, Jordan did his permaculture design on our front yard, and I did my permaculture design on our backyard.
Wow, cool.
And through those hours of conversation and looking at permaculture and how the wind works on our backyard and how the water flows through our backyard and how the sun hits the yard. We had a much, much, much deeper understanding of how our backyard actually works as a system.
Mm-hmm.
And we had hours of conversation about what we wanted to do about that and how we wanted to utilize our resources that were, in our backyard. So it really provided us with a great ability to see the potential before we started making lots and lots of mistakes and realizing, okay, we shouldn't have put that here. There's no sun there. So it was a great experience to really get into what our backyard potential was, again, before we made any certain moves that would have caused us to not necessarily do the things that were most productive.
Right. So I'm a big proponent of the permaculture design course, and generally speaking, they're about 72 hours. Did yours last that long?
It did. It was wonderful. We went through a place called the Eastern Pennsylvania Permaculture Guild. So what I loved about this course and what drew us to it was a lot of permaculture courses that we looked into were intensives where they were maybe 2 weeks long, perhaps.
Yep, exactly.
And none of them were offered around where we lived.
Mm-hmm.
And we really felt it was important to think about how permaculture could work in our climate, where we were living, not necessarily travel somewhere exotic and see how permaculture works there.
Right.
Because we really have a passion for local and community, and we knew this is where we wanted to be. And what we loved about this permaculture course was that it was offered during the weekends all through the summer.
Perfect.
So it was cool that we got to see, we went for the weekend and then absorbed the information and then applied it. So it was so nice that it was it was from June through September.
Mm-hmm.
I think we took it in 2013, and it was wonderful because it gave us time to absorb the information.
Yeah. Yeah, I did my first permaculture design course in 1991, and we actually, I'm on a team here now in Phoenix that teach them every year, and we do the weekend one, and the weekend version of it is so important because you're right, you get this opportunity between weekends to kind of sit with the paradigm change that permaculture is.
I agree. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Jordan, thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it just even opened up different ways of thinking about things in lots of different fields. I mean, regarding our backyard, just thinking about all the inputs that could be needed, conventionally thinking, but also looking at, the outputs and what we want to obtain. Some of those outputs can also be inputs, just thinking about the whole cycle and closed loop that Danielle mentioned. Yeah, just thinking about all the different aspects of what an urban farm could look like.
Exactly.
or urban backyard, what that can look like, and how you can minimize all those inputs that people typically just go and try to actually produce that or utilize waste that you already have. Being able to compost. I mean, that's a very, very basic, example, but even we have a pet bunny rabbit. So even just being able to utilize his waste and wood shavings, for fertilizing, our fruit trees and bushes, that's a great example of being able to manage resources.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, pet bunny wrap. Hold on, I'm stumbling over my words too. Pet bunny manure makes a great starter for your worm bin. I don't know if you guys know that.
Oh, yeah. I haven't tried that.
Yeah, that's really fantastic. All right, let's jump on here. What inspired you to build and maintain gardens for others? Because that's what your business is, yes?
Yes, that's the main part of our business in April, May, and June, because living in Eastern Pennsylvania, that is we call that garden bed season. So what we do and why we were inspired to do that came from obviously our own experiences, and we basically wanted to we figured that the easiest way to get people to start to think about the food they were eating and the things that they were putting in their body was to start really talking to people about food, because that's the way we got started. So we thought, okay, well, let's help people build raised garden beds.
Mm-hmm.
And Jordan is a chemist by education, but he is a very, very good carpenter.
Nice.
So basically the way the process works is um we go to people's houses and we do an on-site consultation.
Mm-hmm.
And we survey, what their wants are, what their needs are, how many people are in their family, what type of space. One of the biggest problems people have is they don't really know where to put it.
Right.
Where are they going to put this thing, and where does it make sense? So we educate them about sun and, all those sorts of things. We build the bed, or I should say Jordan builds the bed. I sometimes hold some of the boards for him and all those things. But he builds the bed. We go to the site. We install the beds. We put it together on site.
Uh-huh.
We source good quality compost, which is another thing people don't really know where to get that.
Exactly.
Help them sourcing good quality materials. If they want us to, we plant the plants for them and provide them with the plans for how to maintain what we did. And we have consistent communication throughout the growing season. I send out a newsletter to everybody, here's when you should be changing, taking out old stuff and putting in some second season rotation, more plants. So I have a pretty good, we have a pretty good system with that, but it's just, this all stemmed from a love of doing this ourselves and wanting to pass that on to people in our community. And also a big part was to help kids learn where food comes from.
Big time. So Jordan, you mentioned in your bio that you also do personal care products. So what do you make, and tell me about that.
Okay, absolutely. Yes, we make soaps, we make different herbal salve, we make some lip balms, we have a really good deodorant, and we do some different like essential oil blends for headaches, for just kind of like being invigorated and stimulated, and also for promoting rest and relaxation. So we have like a headache helper essential oil blend, a good night essential oil blend, and then, like I said, a whole bunch of different herbal salves and balms. And I don't know, we kind of got started, I kind of got started by making some soap for Danielle for, I think it was Christmas.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, very, very romantic. Probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I think was the first time. And I don't know, I really just kind of had an interest in it, and I thought it was pretty fascinating. And having a science background, I was really just kind of...
that was probably easy for you then.
Yeah. I think I have the right mindset and skill set for planning out recipes and for scaling them up and for just developing them in general.
Are you making your own essential oils?
We don't make our own essential oils, no.
Because I hear it's fairly straightforward. Have you looked into it?
Have a little bit. I think the only hesitation we have is just the sheer volume of plant material of plant material that you need. Yeah. And I'm sure there's certain herbs that are more suitable to start out with, so that might be something that we look to do in the near future.
Well, that's the cool thing about what we're doing, and I'm going to put me and you in that bucket of what we're doing. I like to call my place an environmental showcase home, and it's my place to experiment, and I get to experiment and create new things and try out things. So, essential oils is something on my schedule for, into the future. So
absolutely. Yeah. We definitely like playing around and trying things out and seeing what's effective and what works and what doesn't.
So tell me, why is it important that people know what they're putting on and in their bodies?
I think more and more with all of the research and everything that comes out about harmful detergents and synthetic ingredients and fragrances and dyes, all of that stuff that's in like the artificial world that ends up, being linked to cancers and autisms and just all of these harmful maladies, we feel that there's plenty of nourishment and healing power in just the good quality plant materials that exist without adding anything extra.
Right. So, well, and I've heard that our skin is our biggest organ on our body.
That's correct. And it absorbs nearly everything that you put on it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to shift a little bit on both of you. And Danielle, tell me about a time you failed and how you overcame that failure, what you might have learned from it.
All right. So one of the biggest failures, I would say, and I hesitate to say failure because I think I've finally developed a personality where my failures, I've been able to look on the bright side about a lot of them.
Right.
So that's a good thing. I'm very happy that started to happen.
Absolutely.
I think that one of the places that we struggled was not saying no to things that maybe didn't necessarily mesh with everything that our business and everything we stood for was all about. And what I mean by that is when we first started our business, I think we just said yes to things or considered options just because we were so excited people wanted us to like be a part of their project or be a part of what they were doing. And I think that for the first year or so really overwhelmed us, and by saying yes to everything, we maybe lost like what we were the end result of what we were trying to do. So I think that was kind of a failure in terms of like not being able to say no sometimes. But I think we've really learned from that, because when we look at each other after we got done, spending all this time on a project that we were just like didn't fit with what we wanted to do, we'd say, okay, we're not going to do that again.
Exactly.
So, or Jordan, I should say, I might be the one that signs us up for a lot of things, and he would look at me and say, okay, we're not doing that type of project again, or that sort of thing, because that's just not, I didn't realize that you could say no and still people would come knocking and say, we need your services in another way. Right. So I think that was kind of a failure that then turned into a really nice success for us.
Nice. And, more often than not, that's the point, because that's where we learn at, is in our failures. And
yes.
So, learn. Learn. So, Jordan, what do you consider your biggest success?
I think our biggest success has really been being able to be comfortable staying at our home and making things work here. As we were progressing, like a few years back, and really getting into gardening and really enjoying and being fascinated by all the different permaculture topics, our first instinct was, well, we need to do this on a bigger scale. We need to have more land. We need to have all these animals and just really go at this. And I think eventually we just, after talking so much and looking at land that was around us, we're just like, we can do a lot of cool stuff and we can really maximize what we have. And I think we finally just decided that, we need to make this work. Like we're in a great location. We love that we can walk to lots of places that are around us. We love that we can be a prime example for all of our neighbors around us, that you can do a lot on a small piece of land. And I think just being comfortable with that was enough. And, being able to be creative and think of, kind of unique ways to do all the things that we were thinking we wanted to do, to do all those things just on a little bit of a smaller scale and maybe a little more efficiently, and, maybe just maximizing the space a little bit better.
Right. And I too have just a little over a quarter of an acre here at the Urban Farm, and we have 80 fruit trees on the property and edible beds everywhere, chickens in the backyard. So there's so much you can do with a small piece of land like this.
Absolutely.
So I want you both to answer this next question. And so we'll start with Danielle. And I want to know what drives you. Like, what's your big why?
There's a lot of things that drive me, but I think one of the biggest things that drives me is that I believe in the power of one person being able to influence other people. And I'm not saying that necessarily has to be me, but I feel like for many years I felt very helpless and, in a really big world and very helpless. And something turned around and made me realize that I needed to start with myself. And by, Jordan and I working together and then influencing, our little neighborhood, and then that neighborhood, those people influencing their family, and then that ripple effect that happens. I really feel like I don't feel as helpless anymore. And I feel like if everybody just did something small, the world would be a really, really much different place. And that's really what drives me day to day, is just that power of, I've seen, just those little gestures of different things happening that then impact somebody else. And it really just feels good to be able to feel empowered once in a while with that sort of stuff.
Right. Perfect. Jordan?
I just get a very strong sense of satisfaction and empowerment and security from being able to grow a lot of our own food. I don't know that I would have really understood that until I've done it, but there's just some sort of great sense of just all of those words.
Yeah.
A great sense of satisfaction being able to go outside and come back in with arms full of food, and knowing that I was responsible for facilitating all of that growth. So I just like to hope to pass that sort of feeling on to some of our clients and people that we've worked with and people that we encounter, to be able to have them share in that experience.
Fantastic. So I'm all about education, and I have to know, is there one book that has been most influential in the grow your own food process that you've been going through?
My personal book is a book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And it kind of reflects on to what I was talking about earlier about saying yes to what matters and saying no to other things. So I think that has influenced not necessarily the growing food in the backyard, but kind of all of it. Like, it really, for me, has helped with, maybe it does help with the backyard. Like, maybe I'm not planting every little thing that I want to plant. Instead, I'm planting the things that I really, really love. So it's a book that basically teaches you and goes through this whole process of saying, yes to the things that matter and no to some of the things that you don't really need to do, and that be secure in the opportunities that will come as a result of saying no to some of those things that you think you have to do. So it's a book I would recommend for anybody to read. Definitely is a book that Jordan and I come back to when we make our decisions about our business and about the things that we commit to.
Perfect. Jordan?
I think for me, a very influential book was Will Allen's The Good Food Revolution. I think I read that probably about 4 winters ago, maybe 5, and I was just amazed at all of the great things he's able to do in an urban area, in what were once dilapidated greenhouses.
I know, and it's just amazing what he's done there.
Yeah, and what he's able to provide for the community around there. Yeah, I was just totally amazed and inspired by that, and if he can do that, I hope to be able to do a small fraction of that with our space.
Great. What is one final piece of advice you have for our listeners, Danielle?
My final piece of advice would be that nothing you do is too small. And I'd also encourage anybody not to let fear of doing it wrong paralyze you before you start. So I think that, anything you do is going to be a start, and don't fear doing it wrong, and don't let that stop you from doing great things.
Jordan?
I think mine's similar. I really like Joel Salatin saying that, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly first. The important thing is that you
Right.
just start and you do it.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show and sharing your experience with us today, Danielle and Jordan.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It's been a treat chatting with you. How can our listeners get a hold of you and find you on the web maybe?
We have a Facebook page called Grow Your Own Freedom, so you can look for us there. And we also have a website called growyourownfreedom.com. And if you want to email us, you can certainly email us at info@growyourownfreedom.com as well.
Fantastic. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Greg.
Do you want to save money at the grocery store, eat more organic, whole foods, cultivate food security, and feel more connected to the earth? If so, then growing your own food is a no-brainer. You wouldn't believe how many people come to me claiming that they can't grow their own food. They think they don't have enough space, that they're too busy, or that they simply don't have what it takes. Perhaps you've fallen for one of these gardening myths. If you think you can't grow food, or if you think the only food that you have access to is what you buy in the grocery store, I have a life-changing webinar that you need to see. It's free and will help you unearth your inner gardener. I've helped thousands of people just like you learn to grow their own food, and I'm speaking from my own experience when I say that with the right knowledge in place, there is no such thing as a black thumb. With this webinar, you can begin making your garden dreams come true and start growing delicious, nutritious food for your family. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or go to iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own food. Remember, that's GARDEN to 44222 or iwanttogarden.com.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.